Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Arcane Alienist. I hope you're doing well out there. As I'm recording this, it's the 29th of December. This will be the last show for 2023. I hope everybody enjoyed your holiday season, however it is you may celebrate. I got some calls to start off with, so let's dive into those, and then we'll get into the topic of today's episode after we field these calls. So first up, we got a couple calls from Jason Connerly. Take it away, Jason.
Hey, BJ, Jason here. And I think you missed the most important thing if we're going to talk about D&D and computer. And that is Dragon Issue 74, the AD&D combat computer. That's all the computer you ever need for D&D. And you don't even need any electricity for it.
Thanks, Jason. I'll put a link to that Dragon magazine. I think it's okay to link those. They're kind of widely available at this point if you want them out on the net. So if I get a cease and desist from Wizards, hopefully I'll get a cease and desist. Will be it instead of the Pinkertons kicking in the door of my house. But we'll see what happens, if anything. It's interesting that the combat computer Jason is talking about as a cardboard circular kind of counter, dial thing like you might find in other types of tabletop games and board games that helps you calculate armor class. You come at the little instructions in that issue of Dragon magazine, and you can cut it out. I think it was a cardboard insert so that it wasn't flimsy, and you turn the dial to find out what you need to hit. It's just a mechanical version of the two-hit armor class tables that you would see on AD&D and basic D&D character sheets. I think it's kind of interesting that was developed by Tracy and Laura Hickman, and then later Tracy Hickman would go on to write the Extreme DM that just eschews any of that kind of complicated stuff in favor of some basic, just DM making just simplifying the mechanics and just keeping the game moving on without a lot of calculations and things like that. So kind of ironic that would come from Tracy Hickman. But man, is there nothing that guy didn't do for Dungeons and Dragons? He's extremely prolific. Anyway, but Jason has more to say about computers and D&D. So here we got another call from Jason.
On a slightly more serious note, I would say that there is so it sounds like what they're doing. I mean, I haven't watched any of the coverage because I don't play the new editions of D&D, and I really don't care what they do. But it sounds like they're trying to meld tabletop simulator with Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. So, that's fine. There is a huge difference, though, in my experience in playing a VTT and playing over just Zoom or Skype or over Discord. If you just have a monitor or, the video so you're looking at the other players and you're still using character sheets at home and dice at home, that's quite a different experience than interacting with the VTT, because interacting with the VTT, in my experience, takes away from the game, the role-playing game part of it, because you're having to mess with the digital tools. And that can be very distracting, not only for the Dungeon Master, but also for the players as they fight the VTTs and trying to do things. And I personally find just doing a video call with your players and still running everything manually at home is a much closer experience to the tabletop in person than using a VTT is, which is much more like playing a digital board game where you often stop and argue about the components because the boards came apart or something. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, Jason, I think, to refresh everybody's memory, these calls are in response to my episode talking about a little bit about virtual tabletops and computers and using those, but also at Dungeon Craft, there's a recent video where Professor Dungeon Master got to preview the new upcoming official Dungeons and Dragons VTT, and described what that was like. And it is basically their attempt to simulate the use of miniatures and terrain on a on a virtual tabletop. It's not trying to create a lot of animation so that it looks like a video game. It actually just looks like a digitized version of miniatures and static terrain and scatter terrain and things that you would put out on the tabletop live. But I think you're right, Jason. I think the VTTs can become distracting if you're not. Well, nothing compares to playing at the actual table around, and you can look at people. Not only you can't just hear their voices, you can see their faces, you can see their body posture. That their presence is as much about the role playing as even if you're using terrain and miniatures on the table. You just can't replicate that online, and I think they're trying their best. And I say that's Wizards of the Coast, that's other VTT parties, that's people who are developing online tools. I think the goal is to make it as much like a real life interaction as possible, but you're just never going to get there, right? And so actually having something more like a Zoom call or a Skype session where you are just looking at each other and maybe even doing theater of the mind certainly gets you a lot closer to that experience of sitting around the table live in person together. Now, my experience has been when we try to do both, people just tend to turn their cameras off, or they don't pay. Even if we have our cameras on, they stop paying attention. They get sucked into to the looking at the virtual tabletop instead of looking at each other. Versus if when you do it through a Zoom call, we might throw an image up just to look at for a minute and then turn it off, and we're back to looking at each other and talking like that. So I see what you're talking about there. You want your miniatures and terrain, whether it's live and in person or online, to be a tool that enhances the game, but not something that takes over all other aspects of the game. And I think that's true even with I've kind of gotten the mindset, again, referencing sort of Dungeon Craft and his approach of kind of having minimalist terrain even when we're playing live on the table, because overly ornate set pieces of terrain and minis also sort of, people start looking there instead of looking at each other, and then you lose some of that. Particularly if you spend all your time building these big sets that are, maybe on the table for a minute or two, and then you got to set them up and take them down, which breaks up the flow of play, versus if you can just have a battle grid and a few minis and let a little bit of scatter terrain to sort of help orient people, and those are you can set those up in a few seconds and then just scoot them all off to the side of the table when you're done and go back to theater of the mind stuff. I think that's probably, to me, an experience I think I enjoy more than having to have the overly detailed set pieces on the table. And again, I'm talking about live and in person. Once you get online, though, I think it's easier. Well, this is just point and click, and it's all smooth, and I can set it up real quick. So it becomes more convenient, but it also can come to dominate the game. And again, everybody's looking at the virtual tabletop and not at each other. So anyway, thanks for those calls, Jason. And now, what do we got coming up? I think we've got some calls from a new caller, Mirke the Meek, who has a new podcast. You should check out his podcast. It's great. He's got a few episodes up. I'll put a link in the show description. But let's hear from Mirke.
Hello, BJ. This is Mirke. First time calling in. Just listened to your episode about the convergence of video games and D&D. And I didn't grow up playing D&D. I did a lot of video games, though. I remember the first Final Fantasy game and wondering why they do silly spell slots for the magic user characters. That seemed like the most ridiculous concept. And then when I finally get to playing D&D, I wasn't thinking back to Final Fantasy 1 about those spell slots. But I recently revisited the game, and it's like, oh yeah, that's where this came from. The D&D started this whole thing, and then you start to notice all the little tropes and whatnot from D&D that have crept into video games for sure. And there's also just been D&D video games. And I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 is extremely popular. And they didn't make an announcement saying, well, we've perfected D&D here in this video game. We're not going to do tabletop anymore. I think you're right. Like, this isn't going to completely replace tabletops. And I'm still, I mean, Hasbro has been mismanaging things this entire year, so I don't have any good faith towards the organization. I'm guessing there will be some kind of microtransaction heavy stuff coming at some point, but I'm just not really interested in 5e anymore, so I just don't care really. But yeah, good episode. Thanks. Take care.
Well, thank you for the call, and welcome to the Anchor community of podcasters. So, the Dungeons and Dragons DNA is everywhere in video games. And I don't, I'm not I'm in 1/5 edition game where I'm a player right now. It's effectively a dead edition as of this last release of the Deck of Many Things expansion, and now we're on to 1D&D coming next year. And even if you want to play 5th edition, you can now play it in the same vein. I think that you would play any edition of D&D. Is if you've got the books, you've got them. You don't have to give Hasbro any more money if that's a game you enjoy. But I too am going to, again, I'm playing in a 5th edition game and I'm enjoying it. But as far as looking at what I want to run for right now, I'm getting more interested in getting back into a little bit of BX or Old School Essentials, looking at Knave and Cairn and Into the Odd as kind of inspirations for maybe tweaks I can make, and really having read, I've read Muster, which you guys should check out the Pink Phantom's last several episodes Phantom Thoughts, where he's kind of done a deep dive into this, the book Muster, talking about the wargaming approach to playing D&D, where he's not just talking about kind of playing D&D informed from a wargaming perspective the way they did back originally, but also even kind of in the spirit of original D&D of you're going to have to make up some of your own rules. And at the end of the day, once you kind of get going, with your campaign, it should look different from everybody else's, not only in terms of sort of the adventures you're going on, but the house rules for how you resolve things, and different rule sets, and different kind of the real do-it-yourself spirit of the OSR is kind of permeates that. So that's kind of where I'm headed back for now. Who knows? I'll probably come back around and run some 5th edition at some point in the future. Again, I have all the resources I need to do it. I don't have to support Hasbro anymore in doing that. So, it's interesting to, as I'm gearing up to run a game for 10 or so teenagers, and only 2 of them have played Dungeons and Dragons. I was starting to fret over how am I going to teach the fundamentals of the games to these kids, and I realized they all understand them because they've all played video games. The core concepts are right there. It's just making the transition from it being real-time management in the moment as the clock ticks in a video game to, it's more abstracted on paper and pencil. But just, managing your resources, managing your health, managing your choices and strategies. They already get that. They've been doing it their whole lives. I haven't got on to Baldur's Gate 3 yet because I tend to get very addicted to video games, so I try to avoid them. I want to play it, and I'm interested to see, because some of the reviews I've said, not only is it just generally a great video game, but that it actually, anytime you play a D&D video game, they can never just implement the rule set of the edition of D&D that game is based in. They've always got to make some tweaks or some changes to allow it to function as a video game. But from what I understand, Baldur's Gate 3 may have done some things that actually would work better in the tabletop version of 5th edition. So I'm interested to see what that is, just out of curiosity, but I haven't gotten into the game yet. I'm sure I'll play it sooner or later. I've played all the other Baldur's Gate, and I just got to make sure I've got a little more time where I can sit and enjoy it. And maybe I'll do that a little later this year. But no, right now I'm gearing up for some ideas for new tabletops, which is what I guess the main topic I want to spend a few minutes talking about today. But thanks again for the calls, Mirke, and everybody be sure to check out his podcast. All right, on to today's topic. So here in a couple days, I'm going to be starting up a new in-person, around the kitchen table campaign for my son and some of his friends. We're going to use old school essentials. I am pulling in some stuff from Nave. I still want to try that. We did one session with my son and one of his friends, and it worked pretty well. So we're going to try that and see how it works. And I may tweak a few things here and there based on what is and isn't working and what the players are enjoying. I have talked to them a little bit about, why I am going with this instead of running, say, 5th edition or Pathfinder or something, which is something they more likely would encounter if they were to go out among people their own age or go to a game store. And it's simply, one, that's my own interest, but also I'm happy to run another game if that's what people want to play. But just that there's 10 of them, and I don't think that all 10 of them are going to be there at every session, but Sunday likely they're all going to be there for the first time. But it is going to be large groups, and I just don't think modern. I mean, you can do it. I've done 8 people with 5e, and it was just kind of it could just go so much faster. With 10 people, it's always going to be slower, just because there's that many people to weigh in and make comments and have to say what they think as the group decides what they're going to do. So things like combat and saving throws and movement through the dungeon, that needs to go quick. And the procedural stuff in basic D&D, BX D&D just handles that so much better. So we're going to do that so that things stay fast. And just with that large of a group, even if most of them are here, all that really kind of means is we're probably never going to need retainers to fill out the group strength to tackle the kind of challenges they're going to be facing. So that's why I'm doing that. But one of the things it's allowed me to do is sort of figure out how we want to orient them into the world. So we started talking a little bit through a group chat about the kind of characters they want to play, and me explaining, I think they understand the mechanics that are going to go into this, or they will. It'll make sense to them. But trying to explain a little more about the role play aspect when you're not basically controlling a pre-scripted set of characters in a computer role-playing game where this person can be anybody you want it to be. And then thinking, how much do you guys want to invest in that? Because characters are pretty fragile. If we just play kind of the rules as written, let it happen as is, some of you are likely to lose your characters in the first session or two and have to start over. And I think a lot of them, they kind of didn't want to do that. So I'm going to probably do something that allows give them a little more survivability with I think I'm going to pull in the rule from Hyperborea, where you have so many rounds once you hit 0 for someone to come stabilize you and save you, so that they can learn the fine art of the strategic, grabbing your foe and pulling yourself out of a situation and retreating and regrouping. We'll see how it goes. Again, everything's kind of up, because I'm also testing out some stuff for I think I would like to also start a secondary campaign at some point this year. With more, my other friends, adult friends. It may have to be online, given kind of that's most of my connections to people I play with for the most part. But maybe having it set in the same world. And what I'm circling back to is I want to take a second run at my homebrew setting, the Mythic world of Erd. So that's where we're going to set these things. So I've got some new ideas for the setting, and I'll share a couple of them today. And then there's some other that I have. And I may share them on a podcast, because I don't think too many people though, I have some friends who listen to my podcast, and some of my fellow podcasters might be getting in on the action. So let me first pose a question, and I'd love to hear what people think about this, and then I'll give you a little preview of a couple of things we've come up with for the Mythic world of Erd, new additions to the game, or the setting. So, when there's something that's sort of a mystery, or it's not widely known, some piece of lore that you could find out, it's not like a hidden secret, it's just not common knowledge. Do you prefer to know that as a player and then just suspend, just sort of pretend your character may not know that? Or do you prefer that be something that you learn as you sort of explore the world? So, for example, let's say you were going to play Star Wars role-playing game. And it's going to be set kind of in the, just before the, episode 4 or somewhere during the original trilogy where the Empire is the enemy and you're maybe not part of, teaming up with Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, but you're there somewhere and the Empire is one of the major threats and you're going to encounter stormtroopers and Imperial ships and Imperial officers and things like that. You don't know that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker. Your character doesn't anyway, right? But you as a player know that because you've seen the movies. I hope I didn't just spoil that for anybody. You may not have heard, you may know there's a rebellion, but you haven't heard of Luke Skywalker or Han Solo or but they're out there somewhere. And you just play. I think it's easy for people to understand they're going to play as though their characters don't know that stuff. Or let's say you're going to play a superhero role-playing game that's in the Marvel universe. You know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And it depends on what version of the Marvel universe you're in because they kind of go back and forth on, a couple times Spider-Man has revealed his identity and then he's done something with to get it hidden again a couple times. So for the most part, generally, nobody other than his close friends know he's Spider-Man. So your character wouldn't know that, but you as a player know that. And I think to just, if for some reason you come across Spider-Man or some reference to Spider-Man, you don't know that that's this kid Peter Parker, right? But do you prefer that in your Dungeons and Dragons? Do you prefer when you're setting that you don't know those secrets, or is it something that's really cool to know? I mean, once you've discovered it and you play another character in another campaign in that same setting, you kind of already know it, right? You know what lies at the bottom of that ruin, or the backstory of this famous hero that was unknown, isn't known to the general populace, but it may be known to you because as a player, because a previous character encountered that hidden history. So do you like to know that stuff? If I were to say, again, and put that on the podcast for those of you guys who listen and who might join into some of my games, is it okay to know some of these sort of interesting ideas about, facets of the world that aren't widely known that can be discovered? And again, they're not a hidden secret. It's just something that your common everyday shopkeeper or farmer or something that isn't going to know because it has to do with magic and mystery and myth and things like that. So there's some answers to that, and then I may talk a little more about some of that. And they're not things that are going to come up in a campaign anytime soon. It's just ideas as I start thinking about world building that I come up with. So let me know what you guys think about that. What I have come up with are some other stuff, and I need to pause the recording to go grab my notes, and I'll be right back with a couple things we've come up with and talking with these kids who are going to be playing in this game and developing their characters. A couple ideas I've come upon, so I'll be right back with that. I just got to take a quick pause and grab my notes. Okay, I'm back. Several minutes for me, a couple seconds, half a second for you? All right, this is just, I think the first, we're going to start with the Veiled Society. I think I'm going to run that for them to get this game started. But because we're doing this in sort of my own campaign setting, I'm not going to use the city of Specularum from Mystara. I'm just going to use my own city. And in the back of my mind for the Mythic World of Erd campaign setting, I've always kind of thought there's got to be a city somewhere nearby. We were doing a version of Keep on the Borderlands the first time around with another group. I always thought there's got to be a city somewhere, nearby that is a major hub. And so we're going to start. We're going to do the Veiled Society and maybe also a little bit of other stuff going on before we move on to more of a. I think I'm going to do in the Shadow of Tower Silver Axe is the main stuff after this, so they can kind of get some wilderness exploration, and it's full of little bitty dungeons instead of mega dungeons. So I like that approach. But to start off, we're going to be in a city. Everybody's come to the city for one reason or the other, and they'll get caught up into this adventure, and then they can go on together to the next stuff. So this is the city I always had in my head was I wanted to do some version of Lankmar. I wanted it to be kind of like that. Now these are a bunch of teenagers. I'm not going to go the full on Fritz Leiber. He gets some pretty risque stuff going on in his stories about Fafford and the Grey Mouser. But for this audience, we won't go there. But it is there in this city if we were to be playing with some adults, right? So it is a large city that is just cramped streets and dirty and full of corruption, and not everybody there is bad. It's maybe not quite as bad or as decadent as Lankmar, but it's not. It's not a golden shining example of the best virtues of civilization, right? So this is the free city of Valesparta. It's a large city that overlooks a natural harbor. It's an important center of travel, commerce, obviously. I note it's called a free city because it's an independent city-state. It's not part of a larger kingdom or nation. Of course, it has its own outlands, hinterlands, where it has there's farming and stuff there to support the city. But it is not it is a city-state with some holdings. So the citizens might kind of sometimes debate quietly just how free the city it is, because even though the city is free because it's not obliged to another power, are the common people really free? The cities, in kind of it's a point of sort of pride culturally that it's an independent city, but a lot of the commoners and common workers are like, wow, the city's free, but we're not, because it is ruled by a coalition of noble houses headed by a duke. But the power is in the hands of the guilds. There's a guild for everything. The nobles administer the law, but the guilds control the commerce. Nothing happens in Valesparta without involvement of one or more guilds. If you want to do anything other than buy stuff, if you want to sell things, offer services, hire yourself out, you got to have a guild sponsor, or you're going to get in trouble. And so I kind of view this as sort of what's going on is that you've got sort of maybe a culture that has traditionally been ruled by nobility, and that's still sort of there, but with the rise of merchant guilds and things like that here in the city, you may have nobles who their title is really all they have. The only way they can remain wealthy is to engage in commerce, and they've got to deal with these guilds, which means they get into owing money to money lenders and business associates who may or may not themselves be noble. And so there's this two layers of political intrigue that could be going on here, which I think works very well for the Veiled Society as an adventure. So visitors to the city would want to be aware of a few important laws, which I've made clear to the players as they start thinking about how to role play. Only the Duke's Guard and the Town Watch can go about fully armed. So you can have a dagger. You could probably get away with a walking, a staff or a cudgel that looks like a walking stick, but everything else has to be sheathed or piece bound. Bows have to be unstrung. You can only wear leather armor around in public. You're not going to walk around in mail or plate armed for war. The use of magic is permitted, but it is a crime to use magic on an unwilling party. So offensive magic or charm magic on someone who hasn't agreed to be hasn't asked for you to perform magic on them. And anyone wishing to sell goods or services must be sponsored by an appropriate guild. So if you're a fighter and you want to hire yourself out as a sword for hire, you've got to. There's a guild you've got to be a part of to do that. Obviously, thieves are going to be part of a thieves guild, which is not legal, but even the underworld is going to be ruled by guilds. They're just not legal guilds, right? So that's the free city of Valesparta, which is more or less Lankmar, if you're trying to think of what I'm going for there. The other thing that's maybe a little more unique is what I do is, rather than have a pantheon of gods, and you've got to decide, do you serve the god of the sea or the god of war or the god of law or whatever. The gods in Erd are very distant. They don't really involve themselves in the affairs of mortals. They're really kind of more busy just trying to keep the world functioning. So maybe you do have a god of the sea, but all he really cares about is the tides and the ocean and the movements of the sea. He could care less about people. You're just too small right now to catch their notice. In fact, catching the notice of a god might not be, it's probably not a good thing, because you're interrupting them and annoying them, or maybe they have a purpose for you, but you are just a means to an ends to them. You're not this is not the sort of traditional relationship that I think we often play our clerics in. It is more like actual maybe old world gods where everything is transactional, not really relational the way we think of God and sort of modern religions. But anyway, I've set it up where clerics are actually going to serve these saints who are mortals who have passed on to the afterlife, and because of some great virtue or some great heroism or something important they've done, somehow, through some means we have not explained, are allowed to basically function as a patron for clerics and grant them their spells and turn undead and their divine magic, right? So we created a few in the campaign where we were doing Keep on the Borderlands. They're all human. And what we've got here, though, is a player who wants to play a dwarf cleric. And so I thought, well, okay, let's come up with a dwarven saint. And I showed them, I said, it doesn't have to be a dwarven saint. Here, I'll show you some of the ones we created. You could pick one of those or use one of those as sort of a how to frame one. Or I can make one, and really kind of just new player kind of being overwhelmed. I just wound up making this, and I thought that was they liked it, and I kind of liked it too. So this is a dwarven saint that we've created for the campaign setting, and this is Eldrick. And I thought, well, are dwarves going to call their saints, or would they have their own terms? So I got kind of poked around and looked for other terms that might have a similar connotation. And here's a word, halig, Halig. It comes from Old English. It's got Germanic, or etymologically, it's Germanic roots, which means holy or hallowed. So this is Eldrick is a dwarven halig, which is just the word they're going to use for their saints now. So we've established some new canon for the campaign setting, right? So you might call him Holy Eldrick or Halig Eldrick. He is known as the Delver. He protects miners and other dwarves who delve deep into the earth. It's a legendary dwarven knack for finding their way underground, spotting dangerous passages, is said to be the inspiration of Halig Eldrick. His symbol is a crossbeam resting on two support columns. In life, Eldrick was a dwarf and an elder of his clan who was renowned for his great strength. He's known for holding up some cracking support beams. As the mine collapsed, he held on until all the other miners escaped, but was crushed to death when he finally let go. So here's a dwarf, not a great warrior, not a great craftsman. He was just a miner, but he made sure everybody got out before he sacrificed himself when a mine collapsed. And he has become a saint and a protector of miners and delvers as a result of that. So I always ask that we put sort of three tenets that a follower of this saint would have to adhere to, which could have guide role-playing and sort of the ethos that they use instead of trying to just use an alignment or something else. So here are sort of the three sort of tenets that you're supposed to aspire to if you are a follower of Halig Eldrick. One, your fellow delvers are your clan. You watch over them. Safety is a virtue. Always proceed with caution. And third, carry some chalk to always mark the way home. So those are some things that you would have. I even could imagine, like for this particular order of clerics, chunk of chalk maybe being their holy symbol. But he's also got a symbol that we're going to have on a medallion. But that would probably be an interesting alternative, that you could use chalk as an implement in your rites or spell casting anything like that. So I won't. I'll keep that on the back burner. But for now, we'll just have it be a medallion. Like this is kind of the standard for clerics. But anyway, those are two things that we've come up for the Mythic World of Urt. A free city to have some urban adventures in if we want to, and our first dwarven saint, or I guess more correctly we would call it our first dwarven Halig, Halig, Halig Eldrick the Delver. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about those other things. I've got some some lore that may be obscure, but is that something that you would want to know as a player and be okay with? Just because hey, that's kind of cool. That speaks to what the setting is like, or is it something you'd rather just discover and play? At least the first time around. So, other than that, I'll wrap up here, and when I have something to talk about, I'll do another episode. I had wanted to get back to doing one weekly. I don't think I have quite enough material, but maybe as I start running some more games again, I'll have something to talk about every week. But for now, every 2 or 3 weeks seems to be kind of where I'm at. So, thanks for listening. Wherever you are out there, take care of yourself, and whatever you do today, try to make somebody happy. Thanks for listening to the Arcane Alienist podcast. The music you're hearing is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. The cover art is by Dave Bone. Be sure to check out his stuff at ironseer.com. You can leave me a message. I have my SpeakPipe account linked to the show description. You can also send me an email at arcane.alienist@gmail.com. Just embed a voice memo, or I'll just read the text to your email during a future episode. Once again, thanks so much for listening.